The call came in at 9:14 p.m. A young woman's voice, strained but clear, reported her father missing. He had failed to pick her up from work. He wasn't answering his phone. It was unlike him. Officers noted the concern, logged the report. Routine. But what no one realized at the time was that the truth was already right in front of them. She was looking directly at it. This case would be solved in less than 48 hours. Not because of a sophisticated forensic breakthrough or a dramatic confession, but because of one person everyone had categorized solely as a victim. By the end of this video, you'll understand the critical detail that was overlooked, the psychology that allowed it to happen, and how a grieving daughter became the key to her own father's grave. Welcome to Behind the Crime Files channel, where we examine the details, the quiet evidence, and the psychological fractures where truth leaks through. This is Behind the Crime Files. We examine the stories, the psychology, and the pivotal moments in real investigations. Mark R. Williams, 48, lived in a quiet, middle-class subdivision of Oakwood Grove. By all accounts, life was ordinary, predictable, safe. He was a long-haul trucker, often gone for days, then home for a few. His daughter, 21-year-old Kelsey Williams, lived with him, working at a local diner. Their relationship, neighbors said, was close. He doted on her. She helped maintain the house during his absences. The week of November 5th was a home week. No one expected that Tuesday night to be different. On the night of November 6th, at around 8:50 p.m., something happened that would change everything. Kelsey finished her shift at the diner. Her father was supposed to pick her up at 9 p.m. She waited outside in the chill. 9:05. 9:10. His blue Ford F-150 was nowhere. She called his cell. It rang, then went to voicemail. She called the house landline. No answer. A flicker of worry, but she reasoned. Maybe he fell asleep on the couch. Maybe his phone died. She called a coworker for a ride home. First, it didn't seem alarming. Just a minor inconvenience, a broken plan. Kelsey arrived home just after 9:30 p.m. The house was dark. Her father's truck was not in the driveway. She went inside. The living room TV was off. His favorite jacket still hung by the door. She called out. Silence. She checked his bedroom. The bed was made. Nothing was out of place, yet his absence was a physical weight in the house. This was not routine. This was a break in the pattern. At 9:14 p.m., she called the Oakwood Grove Police Department. Officers responded. They took a report. Kelsey was articulate, anxious but cooperative. She provided recent photos of her father, described his truck, gave them his cell number. She mentioned he'd been home, relaxed, watching TV earlier. There was no sign of a struggle, nothing stolen. The officers suggested perhaps he'd gone to help a friend, had car trouble. They would check area service stations, hospitals. But there was one detail that didn't sit right with the first responding officer, though it was noted only in passing. As Kelsey walked them through the house, pointing out nothing amiss, she paused at the large sliding glass door leading to the backyard. The backyard was dark, falling away to a thick tree line that bordered a small, rarely used community green space. She looked out, then quickly pulled the curtain closed. "It gives me the creeps when it's dark out there," she said. The officer acknowledged it, a common sentiment. At the time, it was dismissed as insignificant. Later, it would become impossible to ignore. Criminal psychologists later noted something important about Kelsey's behavior in this initial phase. Her actions demonstrated a specific cognitive process, controlled narrative direction. She initiated contact with authorities, framing the incident as a missing person scenario from the outset. She provided helpful, factual information, establishing herself as a reliable source and a victim of circumstance. The gesture of closing the curtain, while seemingly minor, was a nonverbal cue of reclaiming control over her environment in the face of a perceived threat, but also, potentially, of drawing a literal curtain across a scene she did not wish to be examined. Her emotional presentation, anxious but coherent, matched societal expectations for a concerned daughter. There were no extreme hysterics, which could have drawn skepticism, nor was she detached. It was a measured performance of concern. The next morning, the investigation began in earnest. Mark Williams's cell phone last pinged off a tower near his home at 8:42 p.m. the previous night, then went offline. His bank cards showed no activity. His truck, a fairly conspicuous vehicle, was nowhere on traffic cameras along the main routes out of Oakwood Grove. It was as if he and his vehicle had vanished from the driveway. Kelsey was interviewed again more formally. She reiterated the timeline. She said she'd last seen her father around 7:30 p.m. when she left for work. He was in the recliner planning to watch a game. She described their relationship as great. She said he had no enemies she knew of, no financial troubles he'd mentioned. She consented to a full search of the house. Detectives, wearing gloves and booties, moved room by room. They found nothing disruptive. But the most disturbing part was still to come. And it would start with a simple request from Kelsey herself. By the afternoon of November 7th, with no leads, Kelsey became a proactive force in the search. She printed flyers. She gave tearful interviews to local news stations standing in her driveway, pleading for her father's safe return. She reached out to his trucking company, his friends. Her social media was a flood of shares, of desperate requests for information. The community rallied around her. She was the picture of a devoted daughter in crisis. In one interview, she made a specific appeal. If anyone has seen his truck, if it's abandoned somewhere, in woods, near water, please just call the police. I need to bring my dad home. The sentiment was universally understood as a grief-stricken child imagining worst-case scenarios. Then she went to the police with a suggestion. She was familiar with her father's habits. When he was stressed, she said, he sometimes would go for long walks in the wooded green space behind their house to clear his head. Could the officers, she asked, perhaps organize a search party there? Just in case he had fallen, hurt himself, and couldn't call for help? It was a reasonable request. The woods were a logical place to look, adjacent to the property. The police, appreciating her engagement and logic, agreed. A search was scheduled for the following morning, November 8th. This move is critical. By suggesting a specific, logical search area, Kelsey was not just helping. She was guiding. She was inserting a location into the investigative narrative. Psychologists note that in cases where a perpetrator is involved in the search, there is often a compulsion to control the discovery, to manage the narrative around it. The public plea about the truck being in woods, near water serves a dual purpose. It seems like generic worry, but it also begins to plant a specific geographical image. Her suggestion to search the woods behind her house is a direct step towards a controlled resolution. It shifts the focus from the unknown to a known, manageable location. Initially, investigators had no solid suspects. They briefly looked at Mark's business dealings, but they were straightforward. They considered the possibility of a random carjacking or violence, but the lack of any evidence at the home scene argued against it. Without a body, without a crime scene, they were adrift. Kelsey's consistent cooperation and evident grief removed her from any formal suspect list. On paper, it made sense. She had an alibi, her workplace, confirmed by multiple coworkers and time cards. She displayed no obvious motive. Their relationship appeared solid. She was the one who had reported him missing, who was leading the charge to find him. But something didn't add up. The complete absence of the truck, the total radio silence, and that cell phone ping, placing him at home just minutes before she left for work. Everything changed at 10:17 a.m. on November 8th. A volunteer search party, comprised of officers, community members, and Kelsey, gathered at the edge of the woods behind the Williams property. The police had done a cursory look the day before, but now they would grid search. Kelsey, dressed in jeans and a jacket, her face pale but determined, joined a team. She pointed out paths her father might have used. The search had been underway for about 40 minutes when an officer's radio crackled. A county sheriff's deputy, part of a different team searching a more overgrown area approximately 300 yards from the Williams backyard, called in. He had found something. Not Mark Williams, but his truck. It was backed into a dense thicket, camouflaged by brush. It was locked. No keys inside. No immediate sign of Mark. The discovery sent a wave of grim energy through the search. This was now definitely a crime scene. The area was cordoned off. Forensic technicians arrived. Kelsey was brought to the perimeter. She broke down, sobbing, upon seeing the truck. Her distress appeared genuine, profound. She was comforted by a family victim's advocate. The discovery seemed to confirm her fears. Something bad had happened to her father near these woods. What happened next changed the entire investigation. And it hinged on a single observation made by a detective standing beside the distraught young woman. The focus intensified on the area immediately around the truck. Detectives reasoned that if the truck was here, Mark Williams could not be far. Kelsey, though visibly shaken, remained at the periphery. She watched the police work. She answered more questions about why her father might have driven here, a place she said he sometimes walked but, as far as she knew, never drove. A seasoned detective, Lieutenant Gordon, stood near her. He was watching the techs process the truck when he saw Kelsey's gaze drift from the vehicle. She was looking past it, to a particular cluster of trees about 50 feet away. Her eyes fixed on a spot. She wasn't crying now. Her expression was still focused. Then, she took a few steps in that direction, stopped, and stared at the ground. Lieutenant Gordon approached her. "Kelsey, do you see something?" She pointed, her hand trembling. That ground there. It looks different, like it's been dug up." All eyes turned to where she pointed. To an untrained eye, it was just a patch of forest floor covered in leaves and decay. But upon closer inspection, there was a subtle unevenness, a slight depression, and the leaf cover seemed newer, less integrated than the surrounding area. This was the pivotal moment. The daughter, in her desperate search for her father, had just directed investigators to a patch of disturbed earth. Investigators carefully began to excavate the spot. Within 18 inches, they struck fabric. Then, flesh. Mark Williams's body was buried in a shallow, makeshift grave less than 100 yards from his own backyard. He had been killed by multiple sharp force trauma wounds. The murder weapon was not found at the scene. The truth was far more calculated than anyone expected. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned. Kelsey Williams's helpful guidance had not been an aid to the investigation. It had been the final step in a plan to manage the discovery of the body on her own terms. The psychology here is stark. By leading police to the body, she achieved several goals. She ended the uncertainty of the investigation, she cemented her role as the grieving discoverer, and she controlled when and how the body was found, ensuring she was present to monitor the reaction. Evidence quickly turned towards her. Despite her alibi for the time of the disappearance, the timeline tightened. Phone records showed a series of calls between her cell and her father's in the hour before she left for work that were inconsistent with her story. Financial records, dug into after the murder was confirmed, revealed she was the sole beneficiary of a modest life insurance policy and would inherit the house. Text messages recovered from her phone, which she claimed were lost, showed escalating arguments about money, her lifestyle, and her father's threat to sell the house and move away. The murder weapon was eventually found. It was a hunting knife belonging to Mark that was missing from a display case in the home. It was discovered buried separately, not far from the grave. Forensic testing revealed minute traces of blood consistent with Mark's DNA, and Kelsey's fingerprints were on the handle, which she explained away as having handled it while cleaning. But the clincher was soil analysis. Soil embedded in the treads of her favorite pair of boots, seized from her closet, matched the unique mineral and vegetative composition of the soil from the grave site soil that was distinct from the general backyard area. She had claimed she never went into those woods. Faced with the evidence, Kelsey Williams's story fractured. The controlled narrative crumbled. She was charged with first-degree murder. Why lead police to the body? For a perpetrator like Kelsey, the ongoing investigation was a threat. Every day the body remained hidden was a day the investigation could take an unpredictable turn. By orchestrating the discovery, she could solve the case, redirect suspicion away from herself by appearing to be the key to its resolution, and, in a twisted sense, finally put the matter to rest on her own schedule. Her behavior during the search, pointing out the specific spot, was a calculated risk born of a need for closure and control. It was ultimately the mistake that exposed her. She overestimated her ability to manipulate the scene and underestimated the detective's ability to see her guidance not as help, but as a part of the crime itself. The case left a deep scar on Oakwood Grove. The community that had rallied around Kelsey felt a profound sense of betrayal. For Mark's extended family, the grief was compounded by horrifying deception. Kelsey Williams initially maintained her innocence, then changed her plea to guilty of second-degree murder partway through her trial, likely as part of a deal to avoid a longer sentence. She was sentenced to 25 years to life. In a brief statement to the court, she showed little emotion, offering only a rote apology that rang hollow. The house on the quiet street was sold. The backyard, leading to those woods, stands as a silent testament to a crime hidden in plain sight. For the investigators, it was a hard lesson in perceptual set, the human tendency to see what we expect to see. They had seen a victim, a grieving daughter, and that frame blinded them, for a crucial period, to the evidence that she was also the architect of the tragedy. Do you believe Kelsey's actions were primarily driven by a calculated desire for financial gain, or by a deeper emotional conflict that escalated into a terrible decision? What do you think was the single biggest error in judgment made by investigators in the early stages of this case? If you're interested in the psychology and stories behind real crimes, subscribe to Behind the Crime Files for more in-depth explorations of cases where the truth was hidden in the last place anyone thought to look.